The furnace inspection sticker was still on the basement wall. October 15th. His handwriting, his initials, and 2 kids who never woke up. Howard stood in the doorway of cabin 4 and couldn't make himself step inside. The yellow tape was gone. The investigators had finished weeks ago, but he could still see the shape of it, stretched across the doorframe, like something meant to hold the whole place together. The air smelled different now, like absence or the void, endless void. Like the room had exhaled everything and had nothing left. Howard Delaney was 61 years old. He'd spent 34 years as a mechanical systems engineer for a heating company in Columbus. He knew furnaces the way some men know engines, by sound, by smell, by the way a pilot light flickered when the draft wasn't right. When he retired at 58, his wife Carolyn told him he'd last 2 weeks before he started taking apart the dishwasher. She was wrong. He lasted 4 days. The cabins were Carolyn's idea, though she'd never have called it that. She'd found the listing online one Sunday, 8 rental units on a small lake in rural Pennsylvania, 3 hours east of home. Wouldn't it be something, she said. Not asking exactly, more like planting a seed and watching where it grew. Howard didn't say yes right away. He looked at the numbers, ran the maintenance costs against projected rental income, drove out alone one Wednesday to walk the property, stood on the dock and watched the light come off the water, and felt something he hadn't felt since his last day at the plant. Purpose. Something ahead of him instead of behind. He bought the property 6 months after Carolyn died. Heart attack. 59 years old. No warning. One morning she was pouring coffee, and by the noon she was gone. Howard told himself the cabins were a practical investment, told no one that what he really wanted was a reason to get up before dawn and have somewhere to be that wasn't the kitchen table where she used to sit. He replaced the roofing on 3 cabins himself, rewired the outdoor lighting, stained every deckboard by his hand, and he serviced the furnaces, all 8 of them, every October, like clockwork. Because that was the one thing Howard Delaney knew how to do without thinking about it. Keep things running, keep things warm, keep things safe. The Parkers booked cabin 4 the 2nd week of February. A family of 5 from outside Philadelphia, parents, a grandmother, and 2 teenagers. The girl, Lily, was 16. Her boyfriend, Connor, was 17. He'd come along because Lily's parents liked him, said he was polite, carried groceries in from the car without being asked. The 2nd night, Lily and Connor asked to sleep in the smaller attached unit, a converted sunroom the previous owner had insulated and fitted with its own heating vent. Lily's parents said fine. It was 20 feet from the main cabin. The connecting door didn't even lock. There was no reason to worry about anything. Around 8:30, Lily came back inside. Headache. Her mother gave her ibuprofen and a glass of water. Lily texted her mom goodnight from the sunroom 10 minutes later. A single heart emoji. That was the last thing she ever sent. By morning, both teenagers were dead. The county coroner would later determine the cause as carbon monoxide poisoning. The heating vent in the sunroom connected to a furnace line that ran through the basement of cabin 4. Somewhere in that line, a hairline crack had opened, small enough to miss on a visual inspection, wide enough to fill a poorly ventilated room with odorless gas overnight. Howard got the call at 6:15 in the morning. The father's voice didn't sound like a voice anymore. It sounded like something being crushed very slowly. Howard drove to the property in 12 minutes. He didn't remember the drive afterward, just the gravel under his tires, and the ambulance already parked at an angle near the cabin, its lights still turning, but no siren running. No rush. There was no rush anymore. The investigators came that afternoon, then the fire marshal, then the district attorney's office. They sealed cabin 4. They took the furnace apart, piece by piece. They photographed the ductwork from every angle. They asked Howard for his maintenance records, and he gave them everything. Every receipt, every inspection log, every handwritten note in the margins of a service manual. He was arrested on a Thursday, gross negligence. Released on bail the same evening. His son drove him home. Neither of them spoke for the entire ride. Howard sat in the passenger seat and watched the trees go by. He thought about the crack in the line and how he had stood 3 feet from it in October and not seen it. 3 other men were arrested over the following weeks. The previous owner, a contractor, and a county inspector. All 4 were released. No formal charges were filed. The investigation continued. Howard stopped going to the cabins. He told his son it was because of the legal situation. Told the insurance company it was on the advice of his attorney. Told the few neighbors who called that he just needed some time. None of that was the reason. The reason was the inspection sticker. October 15th. His initials. He had been down in that basement. He had checked the pilot light, checked the filter, checked the gas valve, and he had looked at the supply line, the one that fed the vent to the sunroom, and he had not seen the crack. He had not seen it because it wasn't there yet. The investigators confirmed that. The metallurgist's report said the fracture had likely developed sometime in late November or December, well after his inspection. Thermal cycling, metal fatigue, the kind of failure that happens slowly and without warning, even in a well-maintained system. Howard knew all of this. His attorney told him 3 times. His son printed out the relevant sections. The engineering was clear. The timeline was clear. But knowing something and believing it are 2 different things when 2 teenagers are dead and your initials are on the wall. He stopped sleeping through the night. Not dramatically. He wasn't having nightmares or panic attacks. He just woke up at 3 or 4 in the morning and lay there, running the October inspection back through his head, step by step, tool by tool, wondering if he'd rushed it, wondering if he'd been distracted, wondering if he'd been too tired that day to notice something a younger version of himself would have caught. And then the thought he couldn't say out loud to anyone, that the person who would have made him double-check was gone. That Carolyn was the one who always said, "Did you finish everything?" Not because she doubted him, because she paid attention to the things he let slide when he was worn out. And he had been worn out in October. He was always worn out now. He started driving past the property without stopping, just to see it. The parking lot empty, the chain across the entrance. Cabin 4 looking exactly the same as the other 7 from the outside. Same siding, same porch light. You'd never know. One afternoon in March, he pulled into the lot and sat in his truck for 40 minutes with the engine running. He watched a pair of birds land on the roof. He thought about Lily's mother handing her daughter ibuprofen for a headache that wasn't really a headache. He thought about the boy who carried groceries without being asked. He thought about the text message, the heart emoji, the last ordinary thing. Then he drove home and sat at the kitchen table. Caroline's chair still across from him, still empty. And he did not cry, because Howard Delaney was not a man who cried. He was a man who fixed things. and there was nothing here to fix. His son called every Sunday, asked how he was doing. Howard said, fine. Asked if he needed anything. Howard said no. Asked if he'd talk to the attorney. Howard said yes. What his son didn't ask was whether Howard had started to wonder if the cabins had been a mistake from the beginning. Not the investment, not the maintenance, but the idea. The whole idea that a man could lose his wife, buy a piece of property, and call it a new chapter. As though chapter 2 could be assembled with roofing nails and stain and a set of furnace tools and enough mornings on the dock to fill the space where a marriage used to be. He had called it his second act. He hated that phrase now. The cabins are still closed. The investigation hasn't concluded. Howard's attorney says it could be months before the district attorney makes a final decision about charges. The other 3 men have their own versions. Howard doesn't think about the legal outcome much anymore. What he thinks about is the October afternoon when he knelt beside that furnace and tightened the fitting and wiped his hands on his jeans and walked back upstairs into the daylight, satisfied that everything was in order. He thinks about how certain he was. He thinks about how certainty is the thing that breaks first, before the pipe, before the seal, before anything you can see or hold in your hands. Some mornings, he drives to the far side of the lake and parks where he can see the cabins, small shapes against the tree line. Quiet, still, like a place that's waiting for something, though he doesn't know what. He doesn't know if he'll sell the property, reopen it, walk away. He doesn't know if the law will hold him responsible, or if it even matters. All he knows is that 2 kids went to sleep in a room he said was safe. And he was wrong. This is my story.